I, Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm back in the studio today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
Good. I'm in the kitchen.
Oh, well,
It's too cold downstairs, so I'm sitting here on a counter chair and uh, enjoying the warmth and the bright sun. Well, some sunshine is taking place, so a little bit different setting. I just didn't feel like going downstairs to the
yeah,
office.
yeah, we're experiencing climate change here in Nebraska. It's like
Yeah,
cold as can be. No,
well, it certainly can't be called climate, global warming at the moment, but it is climate change.
you know,
Right in pattern with what the meteorologist forecasts. So,
I'm always conflicted on a lot of things with climate stuff because I lived in North Dakota during the late 80s, and it was like I was there for the winters of 87 through 89, and those two winters were considered to be the coldest winters of the last 100 years.
yeah,
Okay, and the news articles were talking about how we were entering the new global ice age, and I remember it not getting above minus 20 during the day for 2 straight weeks in Grand Forks. Okay,
uh,
you really believed you know, the new ice age was upon us there.
yeah,
It got down to minus 54 with
yeah,
negative 100 wind chills.
yeah.
Okay. And it's just really hard to fathom,
The
you know,
wife just came in.
oh, okay. Yeah. But it's just really hard to fathom that, it's like, yeah, I'd be for global warming. Can't we warm the planet up a couple degrees? I mean, it just
Yeah,
seems,
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's
unfortunately,
funny
it
what your
brings a lot of
perspective is.
instability right along with it. So,
Right, right. So, um, let's go back. We were talking right before we came on about you know the Cybertruck attack or whatever it was in Las Vegas. Makes zero sense. You got a guy who's a current Green Beret. He's won the
right.
Bronze Star,
Yeah,
and he just decides he's going to commit suicide in front of Trump Tower. He apparently, last I saw, he had shot himself before the truck exploded.
right.
And I don't know what that timing is because I don't know exactly when he shot him or when he was shot. We were all assuming it was like, I guess you always
Yeah.
see
How
you
does he
see
pull the
bombers
trigger
with like,
and set the
does he
bomb off?
have a detonator that he lets go of that the bomb
Well,
goes off? I
I
mean,
guess FBI forensic will figure it out. They'll find that. Interesting is that apparently he had written a manifesto
oh, he
uh,
did.
that basically he was using this as a demonstration, as a wake up call, which I think is the terms they use, basically to get the nation and fellow travelers, for want of a better term, to besiege Washington, D.C., and basically remove, whatever that means, all the Democrats and rich people in power. He was so mixed up from reading the manifesto, from his view of society and things. It's like, huh? Where do you get this? But he was hoping, I guess, that this would, how we've had in the past where people will sort of self-emulate, right?
Yes.
They'll set themselves on fire as I mean, wasn't there one guy that did that during one of Trump's trials, right? In New York, in one of the parks
Did
near the
they?
courthouse.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And so this was basically what he was doing was, something similar. Now, how you can get that depressed, I guess, that mixed up in your head to figure out that you are important enough in your life to stimulate a revolution. I mean, truth be told, there was what was the case in the Arab Spring. Remember that there was
Yeah,
the food seller
the
uh, who
overthrows.
who killed himself, emulated himself, set himself on fire, and that basically started, what we call the Arab Spring. So I guess he was kind of thinking, I'm going to do the same thing. And interestingly, that Arab Spring got global exposure because of Twitter.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
so maybe his thinking was, well, I'll go to the, I support Trump, and I'll use I'll use the Cybertruck, Musk's vehicle, to bring, raise internet, and he certainly got attention by doing this act of, self-destruction in hopes that people will rise up and revolt against the government.
It's
But
just so
government,
strange because
government.
that would kind of explain why he used such a low grade explosion.
Oh yeah, I mean, he could have really done some damage, but this was just, I think, simply set off firecrackers, right?
Right,
And
essentially.
and set it off at a Trump Tower in a Musk vehicle. That'll get global attention. Well, it's certainly done that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it just came off as weird.
Definitely weird. Yeah.
Yeah, so well, hopefully it'll go like that. You can disagree with whoever you want to. You have the right in this country to disagree with people that you don't agree with their policies. But the thing is, this is one of the things that really makes our government great. So I think that if you look at government systems all over the planet, I'm still convinced we have, if not the best, we're close to one of the best. Okay. I don't know who would have a better system of government, but we have a system that has all these checks and balances, and it takes people of all walks of life, of all types of beliefs, to really balance people out. We were talking about this, how some people are balanced individually, but one of the problems I see with our government is, like I've said before, if one of us were elected to represent Nebraska, what happens is we go to Washington, and all of a sudden we're asked to vote on things that don't really affect Nebraska. But if we want something done in Nebraska, we have to support all these other things. We start getting into all this pork.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. Like I said before, I don't think Jimmy Carter was a great president, but he was probably the most ethical president.
Yeah.
And, so the two don't really, you've got
Do
inherent
you want to be
issues.
effective or do you want to be liked?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really, you got a lot of that. And so I think anybody just blanket saying, hey, this person's bad, or whatever, it's like, well, you're entitled to your opinion. But, and it's just like, how often does our government change, like the presidency and Congress? I mean, if you have a president from one party elected, usually in the next midterm election, the other party flips either the Congress or the Senate, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the great things about our government, is that really keeps things, in check. And I don't think the average person really
Well,
understands that.
I will give you a indication of the liberties we experience here in this country. As you may be aware, our Senator Deb Fisher was sworn in again. I guess they have to, whatever it was, in Washington D.C. And she was there with, I guess it was her husband and her son. I don't know. And she was there to be sworn in by Vice President Kamala Harris.
Hmm.
And when the swearing in was done, Ms. Fisher, shook hands with the vice president. And then when the vice president turned to shake the hand of the gentleman who was with her, with Fisher, he refused to shake her hand. That has caused a national uproar and got me so, pardon my French, pissed off, that I called her office and I left a message in Washington, D.C., how disappointed I was with that action. And so I don't expect to be any political ramifications and Gestapo coming and knocking on my door for doing that because fortunately we do, as you say, have these checks and balances. But I was able to express easily with a phone call to Washington D.C. to the office of a senator to let them know how I felt about that situation.
And the police aren't going to come to your door to investigate you for your behavior.
Maybe not for that. Maybe for the mushrooms I go, but no, not for that. They're only gourmet.
Yeah. Well,
And I've not had a
I
lot of luck growing them lately.
I
So,
see all this weirdness going on in the UK where people are getting arrested for social media posts and stuff like that.
oh yeah,
And I'm just like, wow. I mean, I just, it's really hard to fathom where free speech can be in the world and how much better it is in the US. Anyways, let's go ahead and let's, I want to talk about Tesla's kind of fascinating numbers in China.
yeah,
And so Tesla has set a record for their best sales year ever in 2024 in China in terms of numbers. Okay. So for the company, for Tesla, the company, they hit the best numbers they've ever had in China. However, their market share in China went down significantly. And this was kind of fascinating because I see these articles talking about Tesla's doomed in China and all that, yet their sales keep growing. And I think overall for 2024, Tesla's sales went down a little bit for the whole for their
yeah,
worldwide sales, but I
worldwide,
think
yeah,
their profit margins went up. And so I guess you can always cherry pick some numbers and what you want to report. If you're the CEO, you're always going to talk about, well, we had great deliveries here, we did this, we did that, whatever. Ultimately, a lot of it is, hey, was the company profitable or not? Over half of the public companies are not profitable. And it's interesting to see how some of them, you would think that they'd almost all be profitable, right? But it really, for the most part, most of them don't really make money. They
is
overspend,
that Chinese
but they,
companies or
this,
just companies in
this,
general?
let's just say companies in general, at least ones in the United States that are public.
Okay,
Okay. I can't necessarily comment on Chinese companies, but when we talk about stuff on the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the big board, all that sort of stuff, the companies just slightly, it's like 49% of them are profitable. And the rest typically are running some type of negative numbers. Now, some of that negative could be from depreciation or, different things that are sort of accounting magic. But at some point, and you hear these claims all the time that corporations don't pay their taxes because they didn't pay any taxes this year because last year they lost money and this year they made money. And so, but they're able to carry those losses forward, you know. So,
right,
you get different things, but it's just fascinating to see, depending on what spin you put on what Tesla's doing,
yeah.
you can make them look good or bad depending on, I wonder, but I found the China thing kind of fascinating in their numbers. Also, we have a number of topics today on China. It just seems
Yeah,
kind
we
of,
do, and I and
uh,
I have a one that impacts me personally, and we'll talk about that briefly because
oh,
I'm going to look
nice.
for some advice here.
Okay, so let's talk about the new China. It's a Liang. It's a company that's owned by Liaoning. I'm not sure how you say the name. Um, General Aviation, which also I'm pretty sure they make cars, is making a four-seater electric aircraft called the
Yeah.
RX-4E, or Raytheon General Aircraft Company. And it's not anything just crazy looking. It just looks like an
No,
airplane.
it looks like a Cessna 172.
Let's see what we got here.
Yeah, can you bring the photo up? Yeah,
Yeah.
there we
Yeah. I
go.
mean,
Yeah,
nothing really remarkable about the appearance of the plane, anything like that. But this aircraft has decent numbers. So they're having, it's been certified to fly as the first Chinese electric aircraft.
right.
And this is
Yeah.
very much like, we've talked about Pipistrel before, but this looks like it's got a little bit better numbers
Oh yeah, yeah.
than the
This is a
Pipistrel.
four place,
I
for
mean,
example, instead of a two place.
oh yeah, yeah, it's a four-seater aircraft. Let's see.
Yeah,
And oh,
I didn't pick up the performance numbers. I didn't have a chance to look too closely at that today.
well, I was going to say they've actually been doing test flights in this thing since 2019, so like 5, 6 years now.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah, they've had 1,200 flight hours, 1,800 takeoffs and landings in three different aircraft. And let's see, got some numbers. China's low altitude economy will rise from $68 billion, which is about 500 billion yuan or
Yeah,
or
that's
yen, however you want to say that, to 2 trillion. It's supposed to quadruple by 2030. So the market for just small aviation in China is supposed to quadruple between now
well,
and
yeah, China
2030.
and they're also with that they're looking at Africa for that market. That looks to I think to the Chinese that looks like where they can expand without a lot of tariff obstacles being thrown up.
So the aircraft is designed to fly on poor road, to be able to take off and land on poor quality roads, as
Right.
opposed to needing runways. But it's let me see here. It has a 45-foot wingspan, so it's similar to a Cessna 182, but a longer wingspan. Has 90-minute endurance and a range of 160 miles with a cruise speed of 120
Oh,
knots.
that's excellent.
Yeah, let's see. Um, 2,800-pound maximum takeoff weight, which it would allow a payload of about 700 pounds. Oh, top speed is actually 156 knots. Stall speed is 54 knots. It seems like an awfully low stall
Well,
speed.
yeah, but that's what you want for operating. And let's say you're. I think they have some kind of an agreement with Kenya, and basically this could be a medical supply support thing where maybe you need to pick up somebody at a village that needs an appendectomy or something like that, and you can fly in and land on the dirt road and take back off again, and take them over to Nairobi or wherever closest medical center is. I think that's what they're sort of envisioning this to be used for.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of like Red Bull taking some kind of aircraft that was kind of like a Feast or Storch and landing it on top of the Burj Al Arab in Dubai on the tennis court, and then
Yeah,
taking back off. And it's
that's
really just hard to fathom that a plane could basically just almost like "Nee, stop,
no,
and then
there are guys that specialize in that kind of thing. In fact, an acquaintance of mine at the local EAA club is actually that's one of his side gigs. Is he
mhm.
does he attends STOL events, short takeoff and landing events, which is what this aircraft is. He attends those and then films them with his drone.
Yeah,
So he captures all that. And there's some other people that I follow that are really heavily into to that as a sport. They want a little adventure and adrenaline pumping on their landings and takeoffs in places you wouldn't think you'd want to put an airplane down. So
no, no. We had a viewer comment Olinia. We actually covered Olinia. Oh, what was that? Maybe 3, 4 weeks ago. We started talking about Olinia is the Mexican car manufacturer that's making EV only car manufacturing company.
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, we've talked about them before. Anyways, yeah, it's fascinating to see this stuff though about an electric plane. 'Cause everybody talks about it being heavy. I've had some people disputing some of our EV toll discussions. Like the numbers that these companies give. They're saying they haven't actually done these flights. This is only speculation. It's only in their math that it can do these. They've never actually done it in the real world. But the funny
They
but they're doing it. It's weird. I've had people try to deny that these
yeah.
the EV tolls can go more than 20 miles and stuff
No.
like that.
Well,
And it's
now, We can't verify the numbers, but we know that what was it? Joby has flown its aircraft from where mid-state, upstate New York, down to
Yeah.
Oklahoma, or I think it was Kentucky or Oklahoma or somewhere like that. So yeah, I mean they've done it. And they've demonstrated. I think it's Archer has demonstration flights and been working with the U.S. Army. So
Hmm.
no, they're doing these flights. So I think the guys at come on now, the Alice aircraft the name escapes.
Aviation.
Yeah, E-Aviation. They've had on got it, captured on video of the airplane taking off and flying out of Moses Lake, which is where their test flight facility is. So yeah, they're doing it, and of course the Chinese with their eVTOLs have demonstrated those flights as well. So it's happening. I know we kind of live in an age of disinformation easily spread. Speaking of aviation, there's one of the stories I saw today where they had this photograph of a technician working on a device to go into an electric aircraft. And I knew, number one, that was not an electric aircraft. Number two, it was not a real photograph. Number three, it was AI generated, right? You could just tell. I mean, I've started to had enough working now with AI images that
Hmm.
that's it. That's it. It was AI, So that kind of, somebody's going to look at that and say, oh, wow, we got electric airplanes that have, that look like, I don't remember what model it is, but, it looks like a particular commercial model aircraft and it's electric. No, it's not. That's a CGI, AI animation. So,
All right. Well, we'll move on from aviation, but aviation always seems to be one of our popular
oh,
topics. So, you know,
blame that on me. Yeah.
well, it's
Blame
all
that
right.
on.
I think it's interesting to talk about some stuff that's not necessarily just cars all the time.
Oh,
You
please,
know,
no, yeah. In
yeah.
fact, I posted a lot of stories today on the RS stream about electric buses because that's a viable and that's actually growing area of EV development is in the from school buses to transit buses to commercial, over the road tourist type buses. So that's a big area. And there's large numbers of buses being ordered.
Oh, yeah, and that's big business, and maybe we'll cover that later in the week. But it is good to see that transition. I wanted to talk about Hyundai and Kia and what's their biggie, Genesis. So
Are
they're
we
all
going to come
part of the
back to
same
China
family.
eventually?
We will come back to China. I have more China.
Okay. Because I have a personal story that I want to convey.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do that
Just
after we
happened,
get done
just
with this
happened in the
article.
last couple of days involving me and a firm in China personally.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
So Hyundai and Kia and Genesis are now being manufactured in the state of Georgia. Okay.
Yep.
And they did this, a part of this was because to qualify to do the tax credit, the $7,500 EV tax credit, the vehicle had to mostly be made in the United States and had to have a certain amount of the battery components be made in the United States. So Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis fully qualify now for the $7,500 tax credit. Models include the Ioniq 5, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, the Kia EV9, and there's now 25 EVs and plug-in hybrids across 10 brands that qualify for the full 70 or qualify for the tax credit in some form. I think plug-in hybrids only get half,
Yeah.
something like that. But the thing is, there's a threat now that the Trump administration may do away with the EV tax credits. Now, I don't think that can be done by executive action because it was part of the Inflation Reduction Act.
All right.
So I think I think that may take an act of Congress to actually halt that. But I
Well,
don't.
of course, now some of that is decided by the Treasury Department and the
Okay.
IRS. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering because those departments are part of the administration and not the Congress, whether
Mhm.
or not there can be arms twisted to get them to rethink I mean, we'll talk about this, I think, briefly with the passage of the hydrogen, bill. Uh, so I'm wondering if that's the route that would be taken. You don't necessarily repeal it, but you adjust what qualifies so that nothing qualifies. You know?
Yeah, well, that could be a problem. That could be a problem. It just doesn't seem like it'd be necessarily really fair to Hyundai. They put $7.6 billion into building this manufacturing plant in Georgia, and
They're
for this purpose.
foreigners. They're
Yeah,
foreigners.
yeah, I get that, but those are American jobs.
Yeah.
It's American jobs. It may be a foreign boss or whatever, but still, they're they probably had to hire over 10,000 people in the state of Georgia just for that plant, and that's a lot of money for somebody to come in and invest. If you're going to attract foreign investment, you want to have some kind of safety
Well,
behind
yeah, and
that kind of investment.
that's what makes America such a uh, good location to invest your money, because it's a fairly stable economy with what we talked about earlier. With a government that doesn't swing too far one way or the other,
Mhm.
has a sort of natural equilibrium about it. Um, so yeah, that I think that's going to be a hard thing. Of course, the incoming administration doesn't have to worry about being reelected,
Right.
right? In some respects, it's a lame duck administration.
Hmm.
Um, so they don't have to worry about appealing to votes, whereas Kemp and other Republicans there in the state, they may want to stay in office, and so they're going to have to think about what's going to impact Georgia citizens,
Right.
particularly rural Georgia citizens. So they may, like I said, they may twist the arm of the IRS and the Treasury Department to adjust those standards, but I don't think the bill's going to go away.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, Bill, let's talk about your trademark issues.
Okay, so back in 2016, 2016, I started a company called Quick Bike, QUIKBYKE.com. Okay, and I trademarked officially with the patent and Office of Trademark and Patents, or Patents and Trademarks. I officially registered that. So it's got not only an internet registration, it's got an official federal government trademark registration. So I get an email from a guy in China, says, well, I've got a client who wants to register that .com .cn, China, right? And he wants to register .com, .net, right? .china. And I said, well, I don't know who that guy is. I'm certainly willing to, undergo negotiations with
Hmm.
somebody, because basically the enterprise rented all kinds of weather related issues and pandemic related issues, and the critical, unfortunately, premature death of one of my key backers. So basically, the company is not at the present active, but I still own the trademark. And
Hmm.
so I got an email today from apparently the guys that want the trademark, saying, well, we're going to trademark it we're going to register for this China trademark anyway. So I guess what I'm asking, if anybody listening, if you've got experience with trademarks and things like that, do I have any recourse? I don't think so, because it's a .cn. So I replied, that's fine. Go ahead and do what you're going to do. Just don't try to do business in the United States using that name, because If you want to buy it from me, come talk to me. But right now, I that's mine legally in the eyes of not only the internet domain people, but in the eyes of the U.S. federal government. So there we are. Anybody
Yeah,
have
you
any
know,
advice? Feel free to offer. I'd love to hear it, particularly if you're a patent attorney.
yeah,
Not
I have,
that, mind you.
I have two patent attorney friends, so it's an interesting, you know, thing. The question is, how much money do you want to spend to defend that internationally?
Well,
So,
yeah.
because
Well,
if they're not, like you said, if they're not doing any business in the United States, it's really
yeah,
tough
fine. If they
to,
want to do that in China, I mean, hey, EV World. There's a hotel in Singapore that uses EV World as their domain. Okay, I can't. I've had the domain for 27 years now,
yeah.
right? But if somebody wants to use it and slap a national dot something or another on the end of it, hey, that's your business.
Well, remember we found an EV World Africa.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, that they emailed us by accident,
Yeah.
but it was people actually doing business in EVs in
Yeah.
Africa,
So I've had
and
that one for 27 years, and the official trademark with the federal. It took a while to get that all worked out. There's a story, but I got that in 2019. So I've had that 7 years now.
oh wow, it took a while to get that. It took almost
Oh,
20 years to get that, or more,
I won't
over
go
20
into
years.
the details of what happened there. That's too long a story.
Yeah,
But we
one of
finally
my
got it. So
favorites is the guy who had Nissan.com. And so Nissan in the United States is like NissanUSA.com or something like that. Nissan Motors. But the guy who has Nissan.com, I don't know if he may have sold it since this happened, but it's his last name.
it's Nissan.
Yeah, his last name is Nissan.
Nissan.com.
Yeah, and he has a business with his name in it. And
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, Nissan tried to sue him. It's like, look, this is my last name. What are you gonna do? But
Yeah.
but there was another one. There was it's not the Mike Rowe that does dirty jobs, but there
Right.
was a guy named Mike Rowe that was developing software, and he called his company Mike Rowe Soft, but he spelled it MikeRoweSoft, and he got sued by Microsoft for using that. And it's like, but that's my name,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And it is um, it is funny because it sounds the same, but yeah, you see some funny things in that space that are sort of coincidental. It's like, hey, if somebody's last name was Quick Bike, it might make sense for them to name a company that, but
Yeah.
it'd be some weird language or something like that where
Here's
that's
the
their
deal.
last name.
Here's the deal. I had to go to Quick Bike because originally the company was called ePeddler.
Uh-huh.
Right? And I got a cease and desist letter from Enterprise rental cars because of my use of the E in ePeddler. Seriously, from an attorney representing Enterprise said you can't use that. We'll sue you if you use that E, the letter E, in ePeddler. So I went to Quick Bike.
Wow, that's a real stretch from Enterprise to try to think that they have the right to the letter E.
The letter, well, I guess it was the color and the font.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I guess I could see that, that being an issue,
Yeah.
but
I mean, that
you
wasn't in
could
my
simply have
mind.
just changed your color and font, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because trying to say the letter E on the start of a word, it'd be like, well, what if I call it Edward Bike,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
No, it was
I
just
don't know. It's
E
just
hyphen bike or E hyphen pedaling.
just kind of a odd topic.
Yeah.
Oh well. All right. Let's while we're talking about e-bikes, let's talk about sidewalk charging.
Yeah.
And looks like New York
In New
City
York.
says Queensbridge. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Long apparently on Long Island in New York. They're working with the New York Fire Department. They've had as if you're a follower of EV World for any period of time, you know there's been a tragic rash of fires of scooters and skateboards and bicycles, electric models whose batteries have emulated and caused serious apartment fires, house fires, in which people have died. And so the state of New York and the city of New York have implemented some laws and are now implementing a series of measures to encourage people. They don't want to discourage people from using e-bike because it really helps with traffic congestion and things, but also they don't want people taking their bikes inside their apartments or in the halls of apartments and having them go up in flames and blocking people getting out of the apartments. So they're setting up on street chargers for e-bikes as well as on street storage. Now I couldn't find any photographs of what they have in mind at this point, but that's an encouraging move, and we'll probably see that spread wider as it rolls out and we gain experience with it.
Bill, if somebody were looking at going to buy an e-bike, because
Yeah,
the whole idea of these fires is kind of scary to some people, what
sure.
advice would you give somebody?
Pardon?
What advice would you give somebody if they're shopping for an e-bike, if they're out in the market for
Don't
one?
buy cheap. Number one, realize that you're going to have to spend probably north of $1,000 to get a quality bike with a quality battery on board. Try to see that the battery is made by a reputable company, and there are measures being now. I think there's a bill. I don't know where it is at the moment, but there's a bill working its way through Congress that will authorize the Consumer Protection Agency to begin testing and certifying e-bike batteries. So what you want to do is look for manufacturers whose batteries have been certified. May have where we're seeing an increase in the use of battery passports that will track who the batteries are from. Also, make sure that the charger that comes with it is a charger that the battery manufacturer is either manufactured or authorized to use, because a lot of these fires are starting because of incompatibility between the battery and the charger. People are using chargers that were not designed for that particular battery, and they're short circuiting, overheating, and catching fire. So beyond that, whatever type of style would work for you, whether it's a mountain bike, whether it's a fat tire, whether it's step through frame, whether it's a mountain bike type, whether it's a street more focused commuter kind of what do they call them over in the Netherlands? I forget exactly, but those kinds of bikes. Just the main thing is make sure that you're comfortable with who the battery manufacturer is, and make sure and realize that you're going to have to pay some money. Don't rely on some cheap bike that God only knows where it came from and who manufactured the battery.
So, at the gym I go to for spin classes, one of the clubs is getting new spin bikes. And I looked up the model of bike they were getting, and they retail for around $3,700 a piece. I'm sure the club's getting a much better deal than that.
Yeah.
But right beside the picture of the bike on Google was a identical bike at Temu. Okay, and Temu is this low budget giant
Mhm.
Chinese reseller of cheap
Right,
stuff. $3,700 for the Schwinn brand. How much do you
right.
think the Timu was? They look
Oh,
alike.
I'm going to guess a tenth of that.
It's even worse. It was $105. And I'm just like, I was asking the local regional manager, I go, hey, are we actually getting the Schwinn version or are we getting the Timu version? Because they look the same. And there's a big price difference. We could get like,
How,
30,
how
36 of
much
these
you want
bikes
to,
for the same price.
yeah, how
What's
much you
that?
want to bet that those were pulled out of those mountains of share bikes in China, where they just piled mountains of these share bikes.
Oh, I've seen that.
What
It's
what
crazy to think
happened
about.
to all those bikes and those batteries? Got
I don't know.
repackaged, relabeled, and sent out of the country.
Yeah, my next bike I'm going to make out of vape pens, like
Yeah,
that guy
sure.
did.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
like that
the
one guy
guy
did.
the
Well,
guy
look,
that said, "Don't do this, don't do this. Here's how we did this. Don't do this." You know,
right.
it was still a pretty
I
fascinating
didn't
story.
realize
Don't
you
do
had an
this.
electrical engineering degree.
Yeah, there you go. I started. That's what I actually started out at in college. Um, anyways, let's move on to our favorite company that we think needs to get bought by somebody else so they can actually do the production. We're going to talk about
Yeah,
Aptera.
they're
So,
over at SEC or CES this year.
yep. CES, I think, starts sometime the next few days, or
Yep,
maybe it's going on now. It's usually right at the start of January.
yep.
Um, Public debut this week after a short detour to Italy. So Aptera and Pininfarina have been working together. Aptera has been using Pininfarina's Italian wind tunnel to show it
Right.
had a drag coefficient of 0.13, which would make it the most efficient vehicle
That is
ever.
unbelievable.
I mean, if you and here's a picture for folks who don't know what Aptera looks like. It's a three-seater car, sort of, or it's a two-seater car with
It's
three
a
wheels
three-wheel
that
car. Yeah,
looks
it's
like a
two-seater.
Cessna. It looks more like a small passenger plane,
Yep.
and it's
Add
super
wings and a tail,
aerodynamic.
away it goes.
Yeah, and the idea of these is they're super energy efficient. They're covered in solar panels.
Hmm.
They can get about 40 miles of EV range daily in
Just
the
sitting
sun
outside.
if you're in the right part of the country, I suppose.
Right. Right.
And they do 0 to 60 in less than 4 seconds. Um, and they have about a 400-mile range on the battery if it's fully charged. And so there's a lot of cool things to it. And it's not a real expensive vehicle. I think it's like $25,000 or
Something like that.
$30,000, something like that. They've got probably, I don't know how many pre-orders. I'm under the impression it's probably closing in on 100,000 pre-orders. And it's just, they haven't delivered any yet. And it's really
But they're getting
frustrating.
close. They're getting close because this is a production ready model straight from apparently Pininfarina that they're showing in Las Vegas.
Yeah, we just want to see it come to market. We want
Oh
to start
yeah,
seeing these on
absolutely.
the
I want
streets.
to drive one. I mean, I've seen this company had started back in I don't know late 2000s and out of Carlsbad, California. And I had a chance to be out there, and I saw one of the early prototypes. Wasn't able to drive it at the time, but then the company just ran out of money and went into hibernation, so to speak, and then figured out how to get back up. And now they're on the second go round here. That seems like it's taken a long time. And that you talk, this is really bootstrapping at its finest, I think, which is why it's taking so long.
Right, I get that, but it's just it's so frustrating. There's a lot lost by taking too much time, and it's a beautiful vehicle, two wheels in the front, one in the back. You can even I've seen pictures in their prototypes where somebody could open up the back. They could actually lie flat and sleep in the
Yeah,
back. This
yeah.
could be used
They
for
have kind of a camper
camping.
version. Yeah,
Yeah, there's other cool things. Of course, you can do that with a Tesla too, but still, it's this vehicle is really kind of designed for it. Just different things you can do with this vehicle. that give it a nice appeal. Um, they're in booth CP-517 in the Central Plaza at CES 2025.
So if you're out in Vegas, folks, go by and see it, and maybe tell us what you think and share any impressions you have,
Yeah,
as well
I've
as
gone to
photos.
CES a bunch of times. It's
I've
an
been once.
interesting event, and it's just it takes up so much space. The Las Vegas Convention Center can't even hold the thing. They end up having to have
Oh
more
yeah,
rooms at some of
overflow.
the
Yeah,
nearby hotels.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
it's crazy how large that event is. All right, let's get on to talking about California's hydrogen fueling problems.
I,
So,
I put these. There's several articles in there related to hydrogen because of the dichotomy of the reports. You have the one we're going to talk about, which is the CARB report on California's faltering hydrogen economy. Then you have in Washington, D.C., the Biden administration passing legislation that, well, it's actually an IRS ruling that defines what qualifies for the hydrogen part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And then you have Ohio and some companies in Ohio that are big on hydrogen vehicles and have them in their fleet.
you know, it seems, it's a lot like EVs. We're starting to get to an economy of scale with EVs, where EVs can be made less expensively than gas cars.
Right. We
And,
really are.
um, as things scale up, as there ends up being more and more EVs on the road, there'll be more charging stations. Charging costs will become more cost competitive, much like you see gasoline signs, where this gas
Yeah,
station's
come
one
here, we
cent cheaper
charge
than the one
only
across the
18
street.
kilowatt hour as opposed to the charging station down the street that charges 25 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah, you'll see price competition
Yeah.
though. Um, but it's just a matter of time. We need these economies of scale, and hydrogen just keeps getting setback after setback on the scale. So the goal was for California to have 200 hydrogen stations by 2025, and they did seem like they were on track a couple of years ago, but now
Yeah.
it's cut back to where there's 62 currently operational in California. That's a big change from, I think that's half of what they were at.
Yeah, and what's the
And
price of that hydrogen?
I don't know. I
Which I
usually see
assume
it priced.
must be they're subsidizing it, I would imagine.
Yeah, but it still seems to be to fill up a Mirai, it's like 160 to $180
Yeah.
to fill up a tank. And that's a big difference when you're talking about it being triple what gasoline costs.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
mind comparing it to how cheap electricity is. It's probably like 8 to 9 times what electricity would cost. And so it just makes it difficult um, to have this decrease in the operational stations. Projected growth um, keeps slowing down. There's been a dip in the vehicle sales projections. I mean, what have you got? You got Toyota and Honda in the US doing hydrogen
Hyundai,
cars.
yeah. Well, Honda's got
Hyundai
one
does
too.
as well.
Hyundai and Toyota and Honda. GM, I don't think they have anything active. They have had, but I don't think they have anything active at the moment.
Yeah, the problem with a lot of these things is one company will bring it to market, or maybe they're testing it and the market's really just not ready.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the things, is
that's
that
where we're at.
timing in the hydrogen space has been way off.
Yeah,
Whereas it probably was way off in the EV space until Elon Musk all of a sudden made it cool to drive a Tesla. And I think that is a lot of the reason why we've seen what we've seen here in the last 12 years.
yeah.
But anyways, hydrogen, it's always cool to see, stories, but that was on the negative side. But on the positive side, um, Biden is trying to, well, the Treasury Department issued final requirements for the clean hydrogen tax credit
Yep.
on Friday.
Yep.
$3 per kilogram. Oh, wow. Up to $3 per kilogram of clean hydrogen produced is the most generous subsidy in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah. Now
Um,
yeah, what they're doing here is that is the $3 is the absolute ideal maximum if it meets all of the qualifications or stipulations, maybe of the now decided by the Treasury Department, aspect of the Inflation Reduction Act. This has been debated for several years now as to what qualifies as green hydrogen and how it's made and who has impacted this. In fact, I didn't quite understand the story, so I went into one of my favorite AIs and I said, "Would you explain this to me?"
oh God.
And of course, it explains. So the $3 kilogram basically is a tax credit subsidy. If you produce the hydrogen locally, it's for the local market, and the workers are basically union scale workers, and you have an internship program creating a pipeline of trained people to work in this industry. So it's got all of these sort of stipulations around it to make sure. The whole purpose is that power companies with excess coal or natural gas weren't claiming that we're making green hydrogen because we're electrifying, electrolyzing water out of our spare electricity. All you're doing then is basically just shifting the problem. So they had all these stipulations, and that was what finally got approved on Friday.
So that $3 a kilogram would roughly be, if we were talking in gallons, would roughly be $10 to $11 a gallon.
Well,
So
yeah, depends on the pressure at which the hydrogen. It's not like you got a liquid, right? You've got a
right.
gas, very volatile,
Mm-hmm.
well, volatile in one sense, gas. So if that's stored at one pressure, that's equivalent to so much gasoline. But I think, and please, if you're listening, correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that if that is stored at 10,000 bar, or no, I'm sorry, 700 bar, I think it's like 700 bar, which is the equivalent of 10,000 psi. And I think that is the equivalent of a gallon of petroleum. So it all depends on what pressure the hydrogen is stored at, and what I don't know. Can you liquefy? Yeah, I guess there's liquid hydrogen. I don't know. I know there's liquid oxygen, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying it seems like a pretty significant credit.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah,
definitely,
so
definitely, yeah,
that would
definitely.
almost make fueling with hydrogen free for the driver, depending on how that subsidy was
Right.
carried across the board. Like it would almost pay for that tank of hydrogen, which would be very
Yeah,
welcome to your Mirai owners or
yeah,
leasers or whatever they're doing.
yeah, yeah.
Anyways,
I got a free trip from General Motors out to Idaho Falls, and the national forget the National Atomic Energy Lab or whatever it's called, to go out. And the reason the trip was set up was to show journalists how you can make hydrogen from nuclear energy. And
oh,
so I got to see the lab. I actually got to stand on the very first electricity generating nuclear power plant. Just basically a big box was in this
mhm.
thing, and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. That was the first light ever lit by nuclear power.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
What state was that in?
it's Idaho. North,
Okay.
it's out in the middle. You got to take a bus there in a long valley, and it's hidden back in. Originally, that area was where they took the big naval guns off the battleships,
Hmm.
and when they had to rebore them or whatever they did, periodically, this is where they took the guns out into this desert area and fired the guns to test them. And then, of course, after the war, that then got changed over to having some part to do. There's Hanford, which is over, in just basically across the Sawtooth Mountains over in Washington State. They just transferred some of that research and development to Idaho Falls, to do some of the nuclear research. In fact, that's where they tested the very first nuclear powered aircraft engine,
Oh, wow.
because
Yeah,
that
I
was
knew
the
that had been
dream
tried.
in the 50s, was to power SAC, Strategic Air Command bombers, so they stay up indefinitely with nuclear power. And they had a test engine that they set up there for that purpose.
And what did they decide? It wasn't worthwhile. The pilots needed to come to the Earth
Imagine,
occasionally.
imagine an engine that takes two railroad flat cars welded together to hold one engine.
Wow.
So no, it didn't work out.
All right. Anyways, well, Bill, that's all we've got for today. Um, we will. I'll be back with Mike tomorrow,
All
and you and
right.
I'll be back on Thursday. We'll have a special
Right.
guest on Thursday with
Yep.
us.
Old friend of
And
mine.
yeah. And anyways, folks, I want to appreciate everybody tuning in today. And anyways, if you're watching the recording, please leave us some comments. Let us know what you think. Thanks.